Looking for the layout of a game level? Visit VGMaps.com. Stocked with hundreds, thousands of level maps for your favorite games across almost every console, VGMaps.com makes the road ahead easy to navigate. And hey, VGMaps.com was a Nintendo Quest sponsor, so we really love them and love having the site as part of the GamerCast family too. X marks the spot with VGMaps.com.
So this week's icebreaker, and I've actually thought about maybe we can modify what we call this section going forward. Maybe it's, oh man, what a good question. Or another Zobservation. And this one is probably a little bit more Zobservation. As you guys know, a couple weeks ago, I posted an update on the Kitty documentary in which we revealed the title of the film, Origins, Evolutions. It's a two-part thing. And we showed a clip. What was cool is, of course, Morgan posted it on the fans, or on the Facebook page for the fans and a couple of the user groups. And you get the comments coming in, right? So you're posting trailers and stuff, and you see all the different things people are saying, like, oh, this looks great, I can't wait to see it. And lo and behold, I start going through them. And what I love about this is this solves a long-running dilemma for us on GamerCast. Someone said, he looks like Fat Star-Lord, ?
What? Is that referring to you?
Yeah. Apparently looked like a chunky version of Chris Pratt, who plays Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy. What I like about this, and first of all I responded, thanks, ? Now I can cosplay, because someone has given me an invitation to be a variation on a known character.
Well, I don't think that anyone's weight should have anything to do with it.
Should I point out that the person who made this comment had a silhouette for a profile picture?
Is that like those incredibly hot women who randomly follow me on Instagram and want me to buy stuff?
No, it's more like the women from Siberia that want to be your wife.
I haven't had one of those in a while.
I get a few of those a week. Mutual friends,
you get a few of those on the Power Tour.
Now, the other side of that, Rob, is that also means that if you bear a resemblance to Chris Pratt used to be a little bit bigger dude, and he got in shape for Guardians of the Galaxy. So, does that inspire you to know that somewhere in Zob is a Chris Pratt waiting to come out?
A Chris Fat? What?
Chris Pratt.
Put it this way, I'm in no condition to run away from dinosaurs or cruise across the galaxy. Let's just say that.
Chris Pratt.
Maybe if we turn back time, Star-Lord exists at some point in my life. But Chris Fat is here to stay. Welcome to another GamerCast. The trio rides again. I don't like this two-man, two-step tap dance thing you guys did last week. I saw you try to get me involved there and throw my name around. Just, it was a different experience. And now Jay is the only one, the lone gunman, who's been on every episode of GamerCast.
On every episode. Yes, Jay. Jay's got a perfect record.
So basically,
God, I'm scared now.
Glenn and I have to record an episode without Jay's knowing, just so we're all on even footing.
Stealth GamerCast.
I'm good. So, of course, my name is Rob McCallum. I am one of your three hosts, joined alongside Stadium Jay.
My name is Jay Bartlett. I don't know who Stadium Jay is.
You're Stadium Jay, the ex-video game rock star, apparently. We've only been trying to tell people that for a year and a half. Flushed away on one show.
I just like Jay Bartlett. I think that works.
That's super exciting to me,
how about
too.
Cutting Edge Jay? No.
And producing and editing, put a pickle beside him and cover him in mayo, Glenn Stanwich.
What's up, everybody? It's so good to have you back, Rob.
Prickridge.
So glad to have you back.
I did have a lot of thoughts on the Loot Loop, the previous episode, and I recommend people go back and listen to it. And it's also on YouTube now, so people can kind of just listen to it there if they like, in addition to GamerCastNation.podbean.com, of course, or if you're listening to this via iTunes, that's where you can listen to our wonderful voices. We do have housekeeping, of course. Up on the horizon, Nintendo Quest Twitch screening on GlitchCat7's channel, twitch.tv/GlitchCat7, the same individual who sponsors our Zobservations, Icebreakers, and oh man, what a good questions. That's happening April 24th, 12 p.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. It's pretty exciting. We look forward to it. Jay and I will be there, and we'll see who else we can get there as well. Of course, just before that, the box art Kickstarter campaign, that's for the documentary and all things cover art, illustrators, process, past and present, that kicks off Tuesday, April 19th. You guys have a lot going on still. I saw Dash Quest had a whole bunch of new updates that kept getting pushed to the iStore, so that's neat.
No, we've got tons of stuff that we're looking to do for Dash Quest. So I know Jeff from our studio is headed to Game Developers Conference in San Francisco this week. So he's going to be down in GDC, and he's going to a demo of our new game that he's going to show off and get a chance to do a little bit of networking down there. And back at the studio, we're going to be working on some new stuff to get out for Dash, hopefully a little bit later in the week.
By the time this comes out, Jay, if I'm correct in guessing, you're going to have a new episode on Galaxy Far, Far Away about our favorite rogue smuggler, Ham Solo.
Yeah, we recorded part 1, at least, of an episode all dedicated to Han. And it was really exciting and really fun, and there was a lot of energy, and Josh was making Justin and I laugh like usual with some of his weird ways that he spins things and turns things upside down. So, yeah, that comes out, it'll be out by the time this episode is, yeah.
Now, did you guys get into Han versus Han?
What about Hans?
He did, because Josh said his wife, originally when they first saw Star Wars, thought his name was Hans Olo.
I like it. He's like
funny.
a Norwegian skier. He's a ski smuggler.
And you know what phrase, Rob, got tossed around a lot? There's a line. Well, we got to Empire, and we were talking about how Leia calls him a scruffy-looking nerf herder. There's a line in The Force Awakens where I think they tried to kind of recreate that magic. I don't know how well it took off, but there's a part when they're on the Falcon and Han Solo refers to someone being a moof milker because they put a compressor on the hyperdrive. A moof milker. So, dude, we were killing ourselves laughing. We almost felt dirty saying this because it sounds like almost like a porno. Oh man, did you see Moof Milker? It's friggin' insane.
Sounds like something Kevin Smith would come up with. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, what was that cow's name? Milky Moo or something like that?
Moopy.
Moopy, that's it.
Yeah. Breaking news. We can confirm this now. We teased it 2 episodes ago. And everything is squared away. So maybe we should reveal some more information and just kind of let the cat out of the bag. GamerCast is headed on the open road and bound for Las Vegas with cameras rolling. Guys, you pumped or what?
I'm absolutely pumped. I think it really wouldn't be a summer without us going across the country. I mean, it's almost like an annual thing now.
It's a pilgrimage.
So I'm excited to go to some of the locations. I mean, we're not going to reveal that just yet, but we've got a lot planned out and a lot of segments planned out. A lot of spontaneous things that we thought of. We had a big powwow a couple weeks ago. Yeah, man, I'm totally excited. I'm excited to be back on Tatooine again. I can't wait. I missed it.
Do we want to fill people in on why we're going on the road?
Yeah,
or do we want to keep that a bit of a secret?
We can
right
also announce breaking news that we're going to be special guests at the Level Up Expo in Las Vegas on May 15th, I think, 14th, 15th, that weekend. And not only will we be there, and at this point probably hosting a panel and recording GamerCast live, but we will also be debuting the Power Tour DVD. So that'll be the first chance people can get it. Of course, Patreon backers way back when last year that supported us at a certain level. You guys have that coming to you with an exclusive bonus 9th episode only found on the disc. And everybody in Las Vegas will have a chance to kind of purchase that as well. And we couldn't think of a better place to do it because Doug and Nicole from Retro City Games, of course, are key sponsor on the Power Tour. And they're going to be at Level Up. And they're going to have a new store as well, which is really cool. So we're going to get to kind of do a lot of recording and hang out with them. And basically work towards the big unveil of the Power Tour as a complete set, which is pretty awesome. You guys haven't even seen the 9th episode.
No, I have not. I was not aware there even was a 9th episode until a couple of weeks ago.
Keeper of the footage.
I'm the gatekeeper.
So what are the cameras rolling on then? Do we want to give that away?
It's a little bit of everything. Let's just say that we hope by the time that we're done with whatever we shoot, it'll be a good 85 minute experience. I don't want to say feature film, but it's kind of like the GamerCast feature film, so to speak. You're going to see exclusive GamerCast-like content with us three chatting about stuff, of course, interspersed with us doing other game-like fun fanatics in between, as well as visiting some awesome locations and just seeing what kind of trouble we can get up to. Cool thing is, of course, everybody that's a Patreon backer will get a free streaming copy out there once we're done, and everybody else will have a chance to purchase a version of that if they like to. So, want to thank our Patreon backers, because if it wasn't for you guys, then we wouldn't even have the funds to be able to do something like this. It's almost like buy Patreon for Patreon, and the adventure continues. Pretty excited about that.
It would quite literally not be happening, and I think that's a really big deal. We said for a really long time that part of the reason we wanted to do Patreon was to try and help us do other projects, and that's exactly what we're doing right now, and that's actually really exciting.
Yeah, I want to say thank you guys. I mean, it's absolutely humbling, and you guys rock.
I don't know how I feel about presumably the significantly larger amount of time I'm going to spend on camera. I'm feeling kind of weird about that.
You'll be fine. You look good.
I've heard, Rob, that you may be exploring the life of Stan Buck somewhat.
Yeah,
for this project.
I think we might want to put a Stanwich prick bacon segment in there.
Prick bacon.
You prick. Bacon?
Yeah, let people get to know a little, Pie Witch a little bit better.
You gonna go to Prickwitch's little hidey hole?
We might poke around the junkyard.
I was telling Jay, Rob, I was at a birthday party for a relatively new friend of mine last night, who is apparently somebody you know. Apparently he retrieved a tennis ball from his pool for you once in your youth.
I have no idea.
I
can't imagine Chris Fat wanting a tennis ball.
But until I didn't know about the relationship until that. But he's a good friend of our buddy Jeff's as well. And what I didn't realize until last night is he's actually a huge fan of GamerCast. He loves the podcast, listens to it all the time. But what that means is he called me Stanbuck all night.
Yes,
Prickridge.
So thank you for that.
If we ever get custom T-shirts or something like that, I'd love to get you a baseball journey. This is the London Prickridges, and on the back says Stanbuck. It's 00. And the logo is just like a piece of bacon over a slice of pie.
Pietober.
Yeah.
The playoffs are in Pietober.
Yeah, they are. Mr. Pietober. Instead of your favorite guy throwing the baseball bat, he throws the slice of pie. I love it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
your favorite guy.
I don't.
The Stanbuck bat flip.
It's the pie flip.
Whatever. Number 19. Whatever his name
that
is.
guy.
The funny looking guy.
All right, we got something else. So we actually have a letter from one of our.
A letter.
From one of our friends. This came
in.
Oh wow,
we haven't had a letter in a while.
I know this address is something that we should probably address too. So I thought I would read it on air. Hiya, boyos. Been a long time, huh? Ain't so bad. I'm over here. Marco misses you enough to listen to cover music. Anyways, as you do, can't wait to get back to see you lads. And remembered when we last met, you made your old pal here, the British Biscuit, a promise. he'd be the first to play your new, vaguely original, somewhat interesting, but kind of meddling NES game based on your vaguely original, somewhat interesting, but kind of meddling docu-trip about collecting games and hanging out all summer. So when is the supposed title coming out? I'd like to plan a trip. Or have you just conned the world and stolen their money for another summer road trip adventure? Cheers, Tom, a.k.a. Ian, depending who you believe.
Dr. Hook returns from the wilderness of the UK.
Look at Ian trying to have a character again. Get the hell out of here. You quit years ago. Get the hell out of here.
So, we should probably give an update
You know when you
on
get
the
to,
game.
you know when you get to play it, Marco? You get to play it when we tell you. How about that over here? Get out of here.
Regarding the game, we did drop an update, I believe, in late January, early February, that Joe is working on the random drop engine, which is pretty cool, and he has that pretty much sorted out. Specifics still have to be ironed, of course, and right now, he's working on a bunch of the various game states and presumably how they interact and how the player will transition from one to the other and what triggers that. So it is coming. He is still working on his game, of course, Mystic Searches, and that is coming along, and his documentary as well. And we are just slated just behind it, but he's now starting to do a little bit of a double hand, a heavy helping, if you will, getting both games, kind of pushing them down the road. So pretty excited for that. And complicating the matters is him spraining one of his fingers and having it in a splint, so it's really hard to code when you can't type as naturally as you thought you would. I'm sure that could lead to a lot of different bugs. So that is what's going on with the Nintendo Quest game, which is pretty cool.
So if I'm to understand this letter correctly, are we to expect a visit from Mr. Hook when the game launches? Is that what's he getting
We
at?
said when he was last here, wouldn't it be great if he flew over and was the first one to play the finished kind of copy? And we thought about launching it maybe in Vegas and then touring the game back across to Canada.
That's next summer's tour. Spoiler alert.
Thank you, Patreon, in advance.
Oh man, I would love to see Ian again, regardless of what you want to call it. If it's for the game or for whatever reason, the dude is just awesome, and I miss him. Nah, I'm good. Okay, what's next?
That's all the housekeeping I got on my list. I thought maybe we should probably kind of sort of get into the topic. What are we talking about this week?
Well, Rob, you were messaging us about the episode we recorded in your absence, and you mentioned that there was an aspect to that you wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about. Jay and I touched on things in MMOs where you get random loot, or there's a certain degree of randomness in terms of what you get. And we thought it would be fun to kind of dig into the whole concept of what randomness is in video games and what effect it has. Is it needed? How random is something that's random in a video game, and how much of it is just careful, clever programming, and whether or not that can exist alongside things like skill-based games as well.
Great. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting thing you guys talked about. I don't want to retread the last episode, but when I threw that out there and completely forgot until just this moment that I did, it got me thinking about the ways in which that we enjoy that mechanic of randomness, and how you guys even discussed it can be the basis, the entire basis for a game to play, like Galaxy Heroes. And I got to tell you, Jay, I played a little bit more Galaxy Heroes. It is fantastic when you're killing 6 hours at an airport in Atlanta, but it's hard for me to still get into 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. It's hard to get the time to do that.
It's a good game though, right? Like, you like the game mechanics?
Well, that's the thing. I like the mechanics, and I've written a narrative to help me enjoy it more in my brain that doesn't exist in the game. And I wish there was just more story there than there is. Like, if there was like I know you make your way through the stages and you go to the next stage, and presumably they'll never run out of stages and difficulties. But it would be awesome if there was even like Mortal Kombat, right? Like, you got to win the tournament.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's... Yeah, that would be cool, but I don't think there's a lack of things.
It's
to
not
do.
about lack of things to do. It's
I've
about
stretched
like
that game
it's about
out.
the storytelling aspect. That's what I miss. I wish there was more story.
Yeah, I think again, it's one of those mobile games that you just pick up and you do what you got to do for the day.
So,
But no, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I enjoyed it a lot more when I unlocked a few heroes that I actually connected with. Like when you're playing as, no offense to Chewie fans out there, but when you have like Chewbacca and Coruscant Underworld Police, it's not quite as exciting as when you have like Obi-Wan and such.
I much enjoy it more now. I enjoy it much more now, my lord. Now that I have Spam Solo Stormtrooper version, so.
Dude, I am 10 shards away. I should have him in 2
I got
days,
him, and then
so
I've upgraded him once, so that's cool. I'm happy about that.
That's awesome. I'll have to borrow him.
Yeah,
off you.
I always I steal your Phasma all the time.
Guys, as is the time-honored tradition, whenever we start getting into the topic of these shows, I'm going to start with a gigantic, huge, broad question. I know you're shocked. What do you guys think the role of randomness is when it comes to video games? How should it be used?
Are we talking about like in the vein of loot drops again, or are we just talking?
We're talking about the aspect of chance when it comes to any type of game that you're playing.
It's to hook you in. It's like gambling, right? It's like there's a chance you could get a big epic drop, right?
Yeah, it's like that slot machine mechanic that we kind of
Exactly.
talked about the other day.
And that's difficult for me because I'm not a gambler. If anyone who knows me, I don't like to gamble. I like the for sure thing. But I guess for most gamers, it's the chance that the big item could drop. It keeps you coming back.
I think
Rob, you didn't get a chance to weigh in on that on the last episode, so what are your thoughts?
the greater degree of randomness and chance is in direct proportion to the amount of interactivity you have with the game. So, in instances where you're watching nothing but cutscenes, there's no randomness, and you're just sitting there. But if you're playing Donkey Kong, you have to constantly watch the barrels, because you could get a random barrel. You'd have to do a double jump backflip. You know what I mean? So anyways, randomness forces you to play, because you can't be on autopilot.
And that's like almost a perfect example of a random game, because Donkey Kong is known for its randomness. So that's a great example.
I would second Tetris as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up Tetris, Rob, because I had something about that a little bit later, but
Sorry.
can you really say that? No, it's okay. Can you really say that about Donkey Kong, though? Because we have seen it on many occasions how Donkey Kong could be broken down.
It can be broken down as far as, how do I put this? Mastering the mechanics it takes for each scenario. However, as we've seen in the King of Kong, there was the one Donkey Kong machine at Fun Spot that just out of that random chance, it is like 10 times more difficult for whatever reason. So if you're going for like a world record, spot, or you're trying to break a world record, and you happen to get that one time that it's just being a bugger to you, that really sucks. But Donkey Kong is known for that.
And I'm starting to remember the brief conversation we had there, Prick Ridge, Bacon Buck. I think when we use terms like random, it's very much equivalent when we use the phrase magic to describe technology. It's kind of a catch-all word for something that we don't yet understand. But when we're talking about like barrels and Donkey Kong, I think we use a phrase like random to describe those outliers, those really, really rare chances that it's going to behave this way. So there could be 20 ways that a barrel behaves. Let's call it 100, and only 1% of the 100 will it be erratic, and it appears random because we don't have enough experience with that, because it is so minute.
Sure.
But it is technically allowed and calculated in the code.
Pac-Man as well. I mean, we saw our good buddy Mason broke it down for us, and he showed us, why the red ghost does what he does. So I guess you could do that with Donkey Kong, right? I don't know if Pac-Man runs the same pattern each time, or it's different, but...
Well, obviously the mazes are defined in Pac-Man, but I think they have the one ghost that does behave atypical.
So, like, if you start off every single match of Pac-Man, the blue ghost always goes to the left, kind of thing? I don't know if it does that. I know
all the ghosts but one have a behavior that they do. One ghost goes where you're going to go, one ghost goes where you were. You know, it's like Doc Brown's like time circuits. You know, this one tells you where you've been, this one tells you where, and this one tells you where you're going. That's the analogy for the Pac-Man ghosts. You know, and then there's that fourth one that does whatever it wants.
that bugger.
How do you guys think that element of randomness enhances a gameplay experience? What are the good parts of having that sort of aspect of chance, or those minute chances that something might happen, like Rob was referring to?
It's exciting. Again, a loot drop, for instance, in Destiny or WoW or whatever. When you finally get that in 1 in a million chance, it drops and you get it, it's extremely satisfying. It feels quite rewarding, too. It's like all the time you put into this has finally paid off. Out of the 1,000 times you got nothing, this time you finally got something.
I think it's definitely the chance gives that reward payoff satisfaction, but it also is the challenge and difficulty aspect too, right? The difficulty in which what you have to go through in order to make this happen. And once you master that difficulty, it becomes how many different ways can you tackle that to make that happen? And I look at something like sports games when you're playing like NHL 94 or whatever, you're going to score a goal. But how you score that goal can be completely varied. So sometimes it's a random fluke where it just deflects in, and other times it's, a one-timer, the other times it's the swoop around into the front of the net in the top corner, the breakaway, the dancer, wow, score. But then, so there's mastery within chance, too, and how you can manipulate what's going on behind the scenes, I think, to bend the math.
You know what? I just want to talk about what you just said there. You know what my favorite was? Penalties off, just ramming into the goalie, and the puck just goes in. I used to do that all the time. Just blitz the goalie. There are no penalties. What's he going to do?
Is there a point at which something being random can actually detract from a game's design?
Yes. And that was part of the issue I had with the last episode. For every reason that you guys loved what you were mentioning about loot drops, it further and further underlined how much I hate loot drops and the randomness that's behind it.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same point I just made, but I guess in reverse. And I'm gonna reference Galaxy of Heroes again, since I'm not a gambling guy. If you have a chance to purchase this one character instead of spending hours and weeks and months grinding it out, and a chance you might get it, I would just rather do the for sure thing.
I think when I consider that question, I think for me the potential danger in adding a random element that is perhaps too random, it's that it's taking the control out of the player's hands and it's making the player feel like they don't have any actual autonomy over what's going on, right? And I compare that to like something like, to use the gambling analogy again, if you're playing craps and you're rolling dice, there is chance in terms of what numbers are going to come up on those dice, but because you are the one physically rolling them, you still feel like you have some sort of role in what's happening.
Right.
And with a video game, if that autonomy is removed completely and you're literally at the mercy of this,
although
evil
it's
machine.
still there, you just you don't really feel like you have the control over it.
And
yeah, so I think that's why it has to be very, very carefully weighed.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So when I say the direct relationship between chance and is equal to the direct relationship between interactivity, if that chance is maybe measured at such a point that it doesn't matter what the player is doing, so it goes to the other end of the spectrum, there's so much chance that control is an illusion, then you're completely screwed. And I look at something we talked about, I think, a month ago when discussing like Blood Bowl. Playing that game, you maneuver pieces, you get your strategy, and then it's all a dice roll. There's nothing you can do to set yourself up in an event for success because it is a blatant dice roll, and they show you the dice.
You can only stack, if you have an all-star player, your power versus their defense when you're hitting someone. But even at that, you still have odds of hitting a 1 or 2, which is a fumble or whatever. And I'm going to talk about, for a second, one of my favorite franchise of all time, which is Alex Kidd. And the reason why it's not in, let's say, my top 5 is because the boss fights and Alex Kidd are random paper, rock, scissors. and it is absolutely frustrating. So you come up against a boss, and you pick paper, rock, scissors, and then he does it too. So imagine trying to do like a speedrun world record on Alex Kidd to get a really good time, then all of a sudden the last boss you just randomly lose at paper, rock, scissors. It's incredibly frustrating.
Well, that's exactly what Divinity Original Sin was. When you were trying to understand what was going on in Persuade People, which is the only way to connect pieces of the puzzle, you had to play paper, rock, scissors versus them based on your karma score. So if they won 2 out of 3, you lost, but you would have to win like 9 out of 15 to get it. So not only did you have to win more, you had to still have that random element of chance in order to get it. And then it's chance that's compounded too. So it's you win 1, and then what are the odds you're going to win 2 in a row? And then compounded, so it's actually multiples of the same fraction.
I don't mind losing, dice rolls for loot drops. I'm quite used to it. But yeah, stuff like that when it's like stopping you from progressing in the game, like Divinity. Is that Divinity?
Yeah, Divinity, Original Sin, yeah.
Divinity, that, and like Alex Kidd, yeah, that I can't stand it. Nothing turns me off more than that. Oh yeah.
When it comes to video games, this is going to touch on something that Rob has already kind of touched on himself, but how random is random really? Like, what is the line between outright chance and something being really, really well designed?
I think there's a couple different variations. One, I think it's whatever the program and the programmers allow for, even within given variables and sets. So if X is this, then the conditions are met for A, B, and C, or if X is greater than or less than or equal to whatever. So you can really define what happens. But you can also look at stuff where glitches happen in games that programmers didn't expect. So the way that Mason uses like point pressing to go off screen and let everything respawn, and to basically manipulate the standard programming there, wasn't something that programmers thought of necessarily, but it takes the element away from it. You know what I mean? So things that programmers don't necessarily plan for can still happen, and that is random in itself.
The example I come up with is, I think it's a positive one, and I'll talk about Destiny, where I honestly believe that game is completely random. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to it, because Galahorn, I know people who have got 4 of that rocket launcher. Did I ever get one? No.
Yep, I got 2.
But I'll get like 3 of another gun that somebody else wants. So I think that game in particular is completely fair and just completely random.
No. What you're not allowing for, Jay, is you as a variable. You as a gamer are not lucky. So you'll never get what everybody else wants.
Yeah. Yeah, I suck.
The thing is, too, at this point, Destiny loot drops are designed so that if you have an exotic drop, you're more likely to get an exotic that you don't already have. But at the same time, when the expansion was first released, when Taken King came out last fall, people were finding they were repeatedly getting the same exotics, and the reason for that was not because the game was programmed to give them the same stuff, but because at that point, the pool of year 2 exotic gear was so small, people were repeatedly seeing the same gear drop. So even there, that's an example of where, like, even something that is programmed to feel like it's supposed to be completely random has elements that play into making it not that way. Now, what I find interesting is if you look at what Rob was just talking about, and we use Destiny as an example, it's like the players are forcing randomness into it when it doesn't exist, and that's where you get guys like doing 3-man Oryx runs and soloing Crota,
or even better,
all this other crazy stuff you've seen people do, right? The
infamous and now legendary Loot Cave.
Ah, the Loot Cave.
Where you force the random loot drops to happen into a less random condition.
Ah, the Loot
Because
Cave.
the spawns happen so much that the drops become more predictable. And then you can start to see the math, because as a guy who shot the cave and enjoyed the hell out of it, mind you, because I got to catch up on podcasts and really not interact with Destiny, I knew that I could expect X number green or blue or purple drops per hour. knowing I would just sit there and shoot, and we'd do our thing and sit there and shoot and then collect and go to the Cryptarch who hated me. And I was enjoying Destiny at that point.
You sat there for an hour and did that?
The Cryptarch hating players is part of the game.
Hours.
Golly.
Probably like, honestly, 8 hours a day total.
If you want to talk about an aspect of Destiny that isn't random, is the Cryptarch hating everybody. So it's...
Okay, that is definitely... They should make him more crabby and, like, belligerent. The belligerent Cryptarch.
Here's your crappy gun.
The entitled gunsmith and belligerent Cryptarch.
This is also where I wanted to...
AKA GamerCast.
This is also where I wanted to talk about Tetris a bit, Rob. You brought up Tetris a little while ago. And Tetris is a game that's designed to look random, and to some degree it is. But the game's actually programmed to shuffle out sets of pieces about, 4 to 7 drops ahead of where you are in the game. So it is designed in such a way that you should not be in a position where you get the same piece more than maybe 7 times in a row. So even though there is an element of randomness in terms of what order the pieces drop in, they have still designed it in such a way as to try and get you different pieces after a point.
And I'm always waiting for that straight one, and it never comes.
Yeah, Tetris is a really strange thing because it almost forces you to do some math in different versions because it shows you on the side the number of pieces that have fallen and in which quantity. So as the squares come down and then the Z or the Zs come down, or the L pieces or 7 pieces come down, you're like, that long skinny one's gotta be coming because I have 50 of everything else. But still, it never gets there.
I always feel like it never comes, man. And that's my own fault for building myself into that trap, but I do it every time. I make such a nice little thing. Plus, I want to get the Tetris too, right?
It either never comes or you get like 5 in a row.
Yeah.
Or don't you hate it when one comes and you have to waste it? Like you have to turn it sideways instead of like dropping it.
You have like a one square block space and you have to like put it...
Yeah, and now you have this big pole sticking out.
I feel like, this is probably a really good chance to plug the documentary Ecstasy of Order, the Tetris Masters, which is about the world's first World Tetris Championships, from what I understand. It's produced by Robin Mahara, of course, was an NWC finalist 1990, who knows Thor very well. Thor is in the film. There's a link to buy it on Amazon from NintendoQuest.com. And even that title, I think, really plays into our episode, the Ecstasy of Order. So you have the randomness, and it's that pleasure that we get from actually being able to make it coherently and understand it and force it into a logical construct. And isn't that what we're always doing when it comes to either the loot grind or beating the barrels? We're trying to overcome the randomness to master it.
We've talked about gambling a little bit already, and we've talked about, recently, we talked about board games and card games as sort of traditional gaming. How do you guys feel like the element of chance is different when it comes to traditional games versus video games?
Well, we're going to find out when we get to Vegas, aren't we?
Oh, God.
That's your business, pal.
Son of a bitch.
Do you guys quickly want to hear my gambling story? And maybe give the listeners some insight as to why I don't gamble? Other than the fact that I don't like it. So I went to, there's a city up here called Windsor, and there's a casino there. I went with a few of my friends. Everyone was bugging me, you gotta gamble, you gotta try it, man, you gotta try it. I'm like, okay. So, there was a $25 blackjack table. I sat down at it, and I felt sick instantly putting that money on the table. So I put the $25 down. I won, picked up my chips, cashed out, and bought everyone breakfast. That's the only time. I didn't gamble in Vegas, right? I don't remember. I don't think I did.
I think you played like a $1 slot or something, but you gambled at Niagara when we went to the Niagara casino.
I don't remember that. That's the only gambling story I remember. I just remember not liking... You always hear people say, like, I took out $200, and if I lose that, I'm okay with that. See, I wouldn't be. I just think.
Yeah, you played a lot of $5 blackjack and $10 blackjack at Niagara, and I hadn't played, and you kept pushing me to play because your girlfriend at the time was obsessed with the casino, and you didn't want to sit there watching her play because you were done playing. So I went to play, And Big Bucks Macaloo could only find $100 blackjack table, and that's all I had. So I put it all in one hand, and I doubled my money, and I got the hell out of there.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we went to Denny's and had a cool Bud Light.
Oh, that trip, so much Denny's.
Did you get moons over my hammy as well? Or just
yes, I got moons over your slammy sandwiches.
Back when I was an eater of the meats. Oh,
And you like eating at Applebee's and having steaks. Blue steak. The guy who's a vegetarian would only eat steak if it was blue.
I did, and I'm not. And again, I'm not saying that meat doesn't taste good, because it certainly does. But yeah. Sorry.
Not so much.
Totally off topic. What was your question again?
We were talking about randomness in traditional gaming versus video games. How do those things feel different? How are they different?
Rob and I don't know if you've also played a bunch of like tabletop RPGs throughout your years. I'm sure you have, of course. We played like a lot of the Games Workshop stuff. My point is, your character can be built up so much. And in most of these games, if you roll your dice and you get a 1, it's still a critical miss, and you either take damage or something bad happens to your character. So there's always that chance, even in tabletop games, and that's the thing I don't like. I used to play a Star Wars game. I had the Grandmaster Skywalker figure, who is like the most powerful, and I would go up against like a stormtrooper, and I'd roll a 1, and Luke would be injured. I would be so angry, because it didn't make sense, right? Rambling. Rob.
I think when it comes to RLG, real life gaming, you feel like you can directly affect the outcomes. Yeah, I just made that acronym.
I was gonna say.
You can see how impressed we are with it.
I see you sipping on ginger beers over there. Yeah, a little ginger stain knows what's going on there. Just kind of casually looking up from his little show notes. Oh, look at him. I think in RLGs, real life gaming, that you feel like you can impact it, like you were saying with craps. You feel like you can affect the dice. And here's a perfect example. Poker and video poker. Sure. I know people that will never play video poker because they feel like the odds are against them versus a 52 card deck that they can see, touch, feel, and interact with. Now, the downside to real poker is it takes time for those cards to get dealt. You're dealing with real people. There's a certain speed at which that happens. But when you play video poker, it's just you and a machine. So you can play as fast as you want. You could probably play 100 times as many hands on video poker in the same amount of time when you're playing real poker. And the important thing to that is you can narrow the odds and your success rate over a period of time because you can play more.
Poker's a game where obviously chance plays a huge role in the outcome, but I also believe that poker does also involve a lot of skill. Like somebody has to know the intricacy of the game and have a sense of what chance you've got of getting a certain card and that kind of thing. But you also have that social element of poker where it's really important to be able to read the people you're playing with. You need to be able to bluff. You need to be able to make certain plays to try and lead people in the direction of thinking that you have certain cards.
Right, yeah.
And that's an aspect of it where between actual real-life poker and something like video poker or poker video game, you lose some of that, right? You've got a computer that's trying to simulate whether or not your opponent thinks you're bluffing or wants to bet or what have you, right?
That's like we're talking about Cards Against Humanity online. Like, that doesn't make sense to me because the whole game revolves around people and their reactions, right? So, yeah, it's the same kind of thing.
What impact do you guys think randomness can have when you're dealing with a narrative-based game? And when I say that, I'm thinking of something like maybe one of the Mass Effect games or one of the Witcher games where you've got choices to make, and those choices may potentially have outcomes later in the game based on what you choose to do. How do you think the element of chance comes into play there?
Not much, to be honest. The only game I've seen that you can really screw things up is Fallout 3. And Mass Effect, no matter what you do, it's still going to come to the same ending. You're going to have different choices that take you down different paths, but you're never going to screw yourself over. Does that make sense? So I don't think there's much. I think you'll see minor differences in games like that in Fable, but I don't think ultimately it has much of a difference.
Yeah, it's hard for me to conjure a game that has enough random elements that really cater to your choices truly to have more than, I don't know, half a dozen different endings that are truly unique. Ultimately, you're going to get there. Now, events that happen while you're getting there may affect how easy that is to traverse. Like you're playing something like XCOM, and a lousy dice roll could kill your number one guy. And then as you go to the next, stage, which may be randomly generated, as it is in XCOM 2, from what I understand, you don't have your best guy because of a crappy dice roll, and now you can't even beat the next stage, and now the game might be over because of how things kind of unfolded. But as far as random of story options, trickling down, like Jay said, there's always going to be a set number of endings.
And they're not going to do something to make it, like they're not going to not give you enough ammo or not give you that item you need to progress, right? Because that's a broken game.
I think what's interesting is I finally finished Witcher 3 this weekend. Thank you. It was a slog. I finally got through it. I make it sound bad, and it's absolutely not. It really was a lot of game. It took a while to get through.
Well, it held your attention. That's going to be a good thing.
It definitely did. Now, Witcher has this thing where there are timed conversation choices that you periodically have to make. So very similarly to Telltale's Walking Dead games, or Mass Effect kind of does that too, where you have a certain window of time where you got to make choice A or choice B, or the game will kind of make one for you. What's interesting is typically when you're presented with one of those, the gamer part of your brain says, okay, this is significant somehow. This is going to play out some way, somewhere. And what I find is interesting is not all of those have an impact on the end of the game, and there are multiple endings to the game. But what's interesting about it is because you don't know which ones will and which ones won't, it does introduce kind of an interesting element anytime you're confronted with one of them. And that's where I'm wondering if maybe randomness potentially plays a role, right? Not necessarily knowing whether the event you think is significant is actually going to be significant or not.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, totally does.
At the same time, though, I think when it comes to like something even broader strokes, top level, if you will, when you're experienced as a gamer, you start to notice the trends. It's like when we play Uncharted or we play Last of Us and we get to that point where there's nothing but half walls, cars, and like a clear path that they want us to run through, the experienced gamer in all of us says, okay, this is going to be a combat zone. I better stock up before I go down here. And you can almost see where the tripwires are that are built in. So I think similarly, you might not know to a very specific, definitive point if an event is going to really catch up with you later. But if you've played enough of these games, especially like the Telltale games, which are all based on choices, then you know to a certain degree that it will be important. Skies of Arcadia did the same thing in the way that you were perceived by other people, and that opened and closed different areas that you could actually explore. But yeah, I think you start to know how that works, and even within the game, if you feel like you've been burned by one of the first couple of them, then you know the cause and effect of those choices, so you at least become more cautious and know how to treat them, thus diminishing the actual randomness of them in terms of their importance.
I think that the other trap a lot of those type of games fall into too, though, is it tends to be very, very easy to tell which choice will lead to which outcome. There's so many of those games where there's a very obviously, good choice and a very obviously bad choice. I really do appreciate it when you've got a game where those choices do seem a little bit more gray and you never really know what the good outcome is. And there's definitely some situations like that in Witcher where you have to make a choice between two outcomes, and what results from those two choices isn't really great either way. Like one outcome is maybe good in one respect and bad in another, and the other is completely bad in a totally different aspect of it. So it's almost sort of like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. It's just really which choice for you is the lesser of two evils.
Right, but it's not anything that's ever going to stop you from completing the game. Like Mass Effect, if Jax dies or whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, it might suck because you like to play as her, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So That's why I was really disappointed with Fallout 4, how they took that out of there, that you could really do anything. You could mow down any NPC in Fallout 3 and screw yourself over. And I thought that was really cool. It really bummed me out when they took that out. And they also took out the karma system. So it was like these choices I made. It was, who cares?
Well, I think that probably makes it a little bit easier, right? So that you're not so dependent on those decisions that you make and a random act of violence because you're just bored and you can't go on to the next quest in Fallout 3. Well, it doesn't mean you can get sloppy and just shoot the three-headed cow or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know, that would be a bad thing early on in the game. Don't ask me how I know that.
The bovine. You got it.
No wonder you don't like meat after playing that game.
I saw that there. I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, I need a steak.
Blue.
I want to eat that cow skull.
What do you guys see as the challenges in balancing an element of randomness with skill-based gameplay?
It's a great question because this is something that Jay and I talked about a couple months ago and then had a big discussion with Joe about because, like I said, with the game update, the first thing that Joe wanted to craft was the random drop engine. And that's obviously crucial for us because the randomness of what Jay found in the stores on Nintendo Quest was like the heart of that challenge, right? He didn't know what was going to be there. He could choose to buy it or leave it, but he didn't know what was going to be in each store, and then he wouldn't know if he'd see it again, and we wanted to preserve that. So then the question became for us, well, how challenging is the rest of the game going to be, and what kind of skill are you going to need to be able to navigate that? So it's a great question. Very timely.
We also wanted to make sure that the replayability was there too, right? So it's completely different every time you play it. I mean, that's huge, especially for that game.
So are you guys able
up.
to speak to the challenge of that then, just even from your own experiences in trying to design your own game?
Well, I think it goes back to your last episode and a little bit what we talked about earlier on. Is the challenge in just acquiring the loot and just waiting for it to drop and putting in the hours and knowing that if I put in 40 hours, I'm going to get 4 drops of this kind of item because that's what the stats say in the background? Or is the challenge something more on top of that actually skill allows for that randomness to be mitigated? So we have armor sets and we have different items you can get, and luck is a factor in those sets that will increase or decrease your randomness, as well as in combination with your level and in the town and the circumstances and who you talk to. I actually use a program called Twine that I discovered thanks to our good buddy N64 Josh. Starts now, and that's basically a text-based adventure generator. You can create all these different scenes, and people have to choose yes, no, maybe, kind of like Glenn trying to join his neighbor's band. And I developed a system where you had a karma score depending on what choices you made. Now, it was pretty complex, but it was really crude, and I think we can do something similar for our game as well, which is really interesting. So there's going to be a skill with the choices that you make and how you defeat and how you come away from different defeats and strategies and quests. I think it's all going to play into it. So it will be, I hope, a little bit like a chess game and not just a loot grind.
And I like the idea, you were talking about the latest kind of few items that Destiny had where you can buy items that actually increase your chances of getting that drop. I really think that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it introduces a whole new way to actually farm for the loot, too, right? There's a new aspect now to playing almost any boss encounter in the game because on top of the normal loot you get, you have that chance to potentially roll an exotic.
Yeah, I dig
too.
that. That's a smart move on
we should
part.
see, Jay, if we can find a way to build something like that into our game where in a couple towns or once you've made some friendly connections with vendors, if they can go in the back room, I'm making air quotes, and look for some more games at a certain cost. You know, so for 200 coins, they'll go look in the back room and see if they have other additional rare stock or whatever.
We just got a bunch of NES stuff in. Oh, yeah, you did? Where are they?
Oh, yeah.
Where are they?
So before we move on to Patreon, guys, I want to throw one more take on that question to you, and I want to keep this very simple. But I'm going to instigate a little bit here, for Jay at least. On the subject of skill versus randomness, 2 words that I want you to consider and give your reaction to. Those 2 words are Mario Kart.
Oh, God.
I'll throw 3 words. Diddy Kong Racing.
Oh, my God. 2 games I hate.
Talk about how the element of skill and randomness play off of each other in something like Mario Kart, Jay, in your experience.
Well, the game is designed to whoever's in first gets rocked. I mean, I don't know how you can possibly survive more. You can't. There's no way that you can do all 3 laps being in first place the whole time. There's no way. And the guy who's in last or second last is always designed to get the blue shell that kills everybody, or you get the better drops when you're in last. And I get what they're doing, but I think it's just way too difficult to maintain first place in that game.
So what you're saying, there is an imbalance between skill and randomness.
Exactly. You're frustrated by the fact that
absolutely.
your skill can still have basically no effect.
I can have those tracks down. Like, I can know them like the back of my hand, and it won't matter because the guy in the back who never plays is going to get the blue shell and ultimately catch up to me. And
see, that's interesting, right? Because you've eliminated the randomness of the track through mastery of it, and now you're mitigating the random power-up drops, and in tandem with the point in which you are in the race, last lap, first lap, or second lap, or whatever it is, against how many players, how many items,
because you guys,
where you are.
You guys all know that when it's that third lap and you're in first place and you see the checkered flag ahead, you're just praying and everyone starts to sweat. You're just praying like, oh my God, like, how am I going to get messed over now? It's going to be the lightning. It's going to be the shell. It's going to be the heat-seeking shell. You know you're screwed. How many times have you got screwed at the finish line and lost? That's why I stopped playing. I couldn't take it. It was too stressful.
Sometimes I hang onto a banana behind me from lap 1 just to avoid those heat-seeking red shells.
Or you mean the banana that you get when you're in first place and you drop just to have the guy like slide on it and skid in front of you? Like, it makes
you
no
drop
sense.
in the second lap and you hit it on the third lap before you hit the finish line, and then the blue shell hits you, and then you're screwed.
You're
can't
screwed
cross.
either way. Yeah, not a fan.
Well, that'll do it for the main section. Of course, if you are a Patreon sub, you get to listen to more witty, fun banter from us 3. And if not, you can certainly pledge $1, which will get you a copy of the upcoming GamerCast road trip adventure to Las Vegas, amongst other destinations. It's only $1, guys, and you get a good chunk of extra content every episode. It's like 25 cents a week. Come on, you've got that. You got it. So go to patreon.com/GamerCast. And if not, well, this is pretty much where the episode ends. Everybody else? That'll do it for another GamerCast. If you got the Patreon version, mama, it was heated. You'll never have a physical representation of the show because it's not worth buying in a physical form. You'll never get to enjoy this experience. If you really want a physical form of the show, make yourself a Spamwich with a bit of mayo on it and call it Prick Bacon.
Yeah,
I'm your host, Rob McCallum.
Yeah, you haven't done Bill Burr in a while. That was so like last summer. Good to hear him back.
Easy Tour J. Power Tour J. The Chase action figure.
Awesome.
That nobody wants to experience in real life. In physical form. So for myself, Rob McCallum. The non-physical Jay Bartlett. And the digital Stan Buck Prickridge. Thank you for listening.
I'd say goodbye,
Guys.
but my server's been taken down.
Oh, that's good. That's very good.